Thanks for tuning in to another episode. I interviewed Scott Zandbergen. I had a hard time pronouncing his name, actually. It was kind of funny. But yeah, Scott's a really nice guy. We had a great time on the podcast. He's a real estate investor, a father, a husband, and just like a regular guy who pushed forward and ended up buying a bunch of real estate and has been able to retire from his full-time job just recently, actually. So I think it's really inspiring for somebody who might be in that position where they no longer want to work at their job and they want to reach financial freedom. He focuses on duplexes, and we have a lot in common because he also invests in Hamilton and in Welland. So that was really cool. So you guys can check it out, and I hope that you'll enjoy the episode. If there's anything that you would like to hear, anyone in specific that you want me to interview, please feel free to reach out. And just a reminder that if you are interested in buying investment properties, I'm more than happy to work with you. So you can reach out to me by going to welloff.ca. Check it out. And in addition to that, I did create this roadmap for you to download where you can kind of figure out at this point in your career where you might want to go in terms of real estate investing. So go to welloff.ca/guide to check it out. I hope you'll enjoy the episode, and we'll talk soon. Welcome to the Welloff Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Scott Zandbergen. What was it again?
Zandbergen.
Sorry, you told me just a minute ago, but I totally forgot.
All good.
My fault. So Scott is a real estate investor. He's a father, a husband. He's worked for large tech companies since 1993. His current focus is buying single-family homes and adding either second suites or converting them to duplexes. And his most recent role was with Intuit as a principal marketing manager. So Intuit's an accounting firm, I guess, like QuickBooks and all that. So he just told me that he recently actually left his job. So congratulations, Scott.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining today. So I like to start out by asking you about your childhood. If you want to tell me a little bit about where you grew up, and
Sure.
just certain memories you have from being there.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I've been listening for a while now, so excited to be here. I am, first generation Canadian. I grew up in Eastern Ontario in a small farming community about an hour south of Ottawa. Town was called, the original town I lived in was called Burnston, and then I moved to a town called Iroquois, which has about 1,200 people. My parents both immigrated from Holland in the 50s when they were young kids and moved over to Canada and started in the farming community. So I was raised on a dairy farm, did the chores, did hay, that kind of stuff, and was surrounded by my father and his brothers who ran the farm, and so hence there was a real entrepreneurial kind of drive there. I lived on that farm until I was about 12 years old, and then my father decided to leave the farm and start up a company selling farm equipment to farmers. And so when that happened, then we moved to town, and that was a town called Iroquois. Like I said, 1,200 people, and I was about 12 years old. And now I lived in like a very, very small community where I had an opportunity to look for opportunities like cutting grass, doing a newspaper route, things like that. And so that's where I started to kind of get my own entrepreneurial drive a bit. So I didn't actually have a traditional job, as a student for quite a while. I did a lot of those, side things, helping neighbors out and shoveling snow. I hired a cousin of mine to help me cut lawns when I became too busy. So things like that. So that's kind of where I got my start, I guess.
That's really cool. And I've heard of other people like that have been on the show here that have sort of a similar background. Parents coming from Europe, they get into farming for some reason, and
everybody does.
Yeah, that's it. And then it's so cool to see where that takes you eventually. Yeah. So you had that sort of itch to follow in your parents' footsteps. Your dad was selling farm equipment. That's so cool that he went from being a farmer to selling the equipment and
that's right,
living that North American type of dream in some ways.
Yeah.
Did your parents ever invest in real estate?
Not as an investment, no. So always owned their own homes, and we moved a lot when I was a kid. So after living on the farm till I was 12, and then we moved to that little town after that. We moved a couple more times afterwards, and it was always to do with getting, taking advantage of some of the equity buildup in the home and whatnot. And so there was always that interest, I think, that my dad certainly had around what real estate could do. I remember there were lots of times when we would be walking through some lot that he had his eye on, and we would go take a walk through this 2-acre property, and he would lay out some vision that we were going to build a house there and it was going to be awesome, and then we didn't do it, and then we'd move somewhere else instead. But that was always kind of a thing. And I think that's just sometimes entrepreneurial people are always kind of movers and shakers and looking for those kinds of opportunities, and sometimes that is you're switching up your primary residence, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's dive into a little bit of the real estate stuff. You've been investing for a while now. When did you start?
Yeah. So I started in, I guess around 2013 is when I jumped into like education and started learning, attending a lot of seminars and listening to podcasts. I took the plunge in 2014 is when I bought my first investment property.
Cool.
And that was single family home rentals, did a few of those, and held on to them for 5 years, I think, for all the single family homes that we had purchased then. And then just kind of switched up our strategy eventually, right? So things change. I think a lot of people, when they first start investing, they start with single families because they are the easiest.
Yeah.
Especially when managing a tenant, you never hear from them. All the utilities go in their name. There's never fighting because there's not more than one family living in the house. So it's just easy, right? But then I think the more savvy you become, then you realize that there are more opportunities if I can get more families under one roof, right? Sharing one roof, one furnace, one air conditioner unit, that kind of thing, and then generating more cash flow.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you have any multi-units, like let's say 4+ units?
No, all I have are duplexes now.
Duplexes, yeah.
So my entire portfolio consists of duplexes.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you convert some of the first ones you bought single families into duplexes?
No, actually we didn't. We actually looked at that as an option and chose not to because these were homes that were purchased on the east side of Toronto. So this is, we moved a lot too, as like my family. And at this point in time, we were living in the beaches in Toronto, and we started investing east of the city. So Bowmanville and Oshawa. And I remember when I started looking into doing duplexing, we had these single family homes in the portfolio, started looking at what would it cost to change these into duplexes. The footprint of the house just wasn't conducive to a good duplex, though, or secondary suite, because they were more of your traditional 3-bedroom suburban house with like not very much square foot per floor. And as a result, it just didn't seem like we would be a big enough apartment in the basement, not to mention the fact that there was no separate entrance to the basement. So we would have to, put one of those in, carve that out. So a lot of expense. So what we did was, because the value of those houses had gone up so significantly over the 5 years that we had owned them, we thought, well, this is an opportunity. My wife and I thought, like, let's sell these properties because there's enough equity build up now, and we'll take that equity and then parlay that into what we want to do next, which is more of the duplex or secondary suite conversions.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in Welland?
That's interesting. So this was because so I live in Georgetown now. So we moved from the beaches over to Georgetown. This was work related. I changed jobs, and I was working for Intuit, like you said, in Mississauga. And then I got connected in with a new realtor who started showing me some properties. I said, I want to look at buying some stuff in the Hamilton area because I'd been east of the city and I wanted to be in Hamilton. So we looked at some stuff, and she then took me out to look at some properties in St. Catharines. And on one particular Saturday tour, we were looking at a bunch of properties. One had come up that she said, we should go take a look at this one, and it was in Welland. And I knew nothing about Welland. I mean, I'd been to St. Catharines a few times in my life and obviously been up to Niagara Falls, but I don't know if I'd ever been in Welland. So we thought, what the heck? We'll just drive down the 406, another 20 minutes or whatever it is. We check out Welland, saw a property, and we bought it that day. So it just kind of checked the boxes. And I saw for the money what I was going to get in St. Catharines relative to what I could get in Welland for that money. And it was it was the perfect kind of scenario where it was about a 1,400 square foot bungalow. It had an unfinished basement with really good ceiling height. And so we just looked at that and knew right away this was going to work, right? It was on a big lot, like I want to say it's 60 foot by maybe 120, something like that. So lots of opportunity there.
Yeah.
So we just we took the plunge and then did the conversion, and then that was just the beginning of a bit of a buying spree in Welland over the next 2 years, I guess it was, or a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
Where we had a lot of great experiences and finding decent tenants and yeah.
So I'm assuming you would put in your second suite or duplex it, as some people might say, and then you would refinance. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the burr, as they say, right?
Yeah,
so,
and you would take advantage of the fact that you were working, you had a good job, your wife's working, whatever else,
That's right.
and you were able to get mortgages.
That's right.
Did you do them all yourself? Because you were saying you have about 18 doors or something.
Yeah.
Or are those all in your name, or you started working with people as well?
So the vast majority are in my name. Recently, I've started bringing on some joint venture partners to help me expand, but the vast majority are in my name right now.
Cool.
Even actually, one side point here on the JV topic. So I did 2 deals earlier on where I was the financial partner in the JV agreement. And I used that as an opportunity to kind of springboard my way into the learning process, which was actually incredibly helpful. And so I still have 2 of those homes in the portfolio. And today they are probably some of the best properties I have because I do nothing for them other than I share a bank account with my active partner who does all the work, and I don't even know the tenants' names. Right? It's pretty nice, actually.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So a lot of people like that are listening might think, okay, I'm interested. I have a little bit of money. I'm able to qualify for a mortgage. And you're saying that you were in that position at one point. And sometimes people will approach you or approach me and say, I want to learn.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this is a good opportunity potentially for somebody to learn and understand how the process works.
Absolutely. So that was my motivation when I did it, was that I wanted to use it as an opportunity to shadow the working partner and learn the process. And so I did a house like that in Hamilton. Yeah. And that was the first one that I was a little bit more hands-on with the duplexing process or adding that secondary suite. So meeting more members of like the power team and how does this all work? And so, yeah, I put in the funds, I qualified for the mortgage, but I gave up a chunk of the equity. But I think about what I learned as a result of that gave me a big boost in confidence where I went and did the next bunch on my own 100%, right?
Exactly. And what's that worth at the end of the day? Because I did this thing where I kind of quantified the value of an active partner.
Yeah.
So if you put everything that an active partner does and you quantify it in some ways, it ends up adding up to quite a bit. So I realized because sometimes people don't understand the value. And if you put the numbers in it, I think it's a really cool way to look at it. So
yeah. Just knowing that whenever there's a tenant turnover on those properties, like I don't have to worry about it at all, right? We were chatting before we started recording about that anxiety I get when you get a text or a phone call from a tenant. Yeah. Sometimes just meaningless things that they ask you about, but it's always that slight annoyance that you have to deal with. Yeah. I don't deal with any of that on those projects or those properties, and it's kind of nice in a way. So I don't regret those ones at all. And in fact, I just liked what you said. That was the springboard for me to kind of get the learning and give me confidence to go do more on my own.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's so important. As you want to develop and grow your business, you need to pay for either coaching or for help, and your partner kind of serves as a coach in some ways. They help you understand the systems that it takes and the team that you need and all the other things.
100%. Yeah. It's think of it as coaching. You're right. That's and so more recently I've had some JV or joint venture prospects reach out to me, now that I'm in this full time, people that want to invest with me. And I've had people ask me too about, do you do coaching? And I often will say, I don't actually. I don't officially, I'm not going to charge for my time to sit down with you and teach you the ropes. I mean, I could go down that path and maybe I will in time. But right now my answer to them is, maybe we should just do a deal together, right? Yeah. I can show you. And if you want to be like a passive, semi-active investor and kind of shadow me, and I'll teach you everything that I know about the process and, introduce you to my team, and just kind of walk you through that to give you confidence, and then maybe you will feel more comfortable doing it on your own after that, right?
Sure.
So yeah, it's like it's another form of coaching.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what do you like about Welland today?
Right. We're coming back to Welland.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I like about Welland is, first of all, the price points are still good enough, right? Where you can buy a good, like a solid brick bungalow, 1950s, 1960s bungalow, which has the nice footprint that can get a suite in at a decent price, right? So you're paying $350,000 to $400,000, right? And that has been creeping up though over the last little while, and now it's harder to find. So
that's kind of what Hamilton was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then the renovation costs are the renovation costs. If I'm in Hamilton doing it or if I'm in Welland doing it, I know roughly what it's going to cost me to put a 2 or a 3 bedroom suite in the basement. But where Welland has an advantage is that the city is hungry for investors to come in and increase the housing stock, and as a result, the building department does not sit around waiting to issue permits very long at all. Right? They're friendly towards investors. When the inspections need to happen for plumbing and electrical and whatever else, and they come in, they're not nitpicking on the smallest things. They don't have crazy rules that they're trying to follow that don't make sense from an investor's perspective. They're streamlining the process, right? And that's been just a breath of fresh air. So I know a lot of people that invest in St. Catharines, and they just have come to work around all of the restrictions that the building department puts on you, like 640 square feet or whatever it is max in the basement. None of those rules apply in Welland. You still have to build safe units with fire separation, soundproofing, and all that.
Follow Ontario Building Code and whatever else.
All those mandatory things. Yeah. But they're just great to work with, right? And so there's that element. Now, Welland's about 50,000 people or so population. It is growing. It's not. It's not as robust a community as like a Hamilton is, because you're not as close to the GTA.
Yep.
And as a result, the tenant profile it's a little more challenging, right, to find A tenants in Welland, but you can do it, right? And so I've got a number of duplexes there now that in fact, I just filled one 2 days ago. I was out there because I have a basement unit that's turning over, and I put my ads up, and in 2 weeks I had over 50 inquiries. Here we are in the middle of COVID, right? 50 inquiries. This is for an August move-in, and I invited 5 people to the showing. I'm getting better at making sure they show up, because it used to be I'd drive out to Welland, and then I'd get 1 out of 5 would show up to the appointments. All 5 showed up, and I picked one who really wanted it and gave me a deposit, and then I do all my due diligence and all that, and then we moved forward. And there are good prospects out there, right? This person's a teacher, high credit score, so check the boxes. I do find that the majority of my tenants in Welland tend to be younger families starting out, aspirations to buy a home maybe in the next 5 years, but just not there yet. So they're going to rent for a while, and they are a good candidate for either a 3-bedroom main floor or a 3-bedroom basement.
Right.
So like there's a lot of attributes that I do like about Welland. It also proximity to St. Catharines, where the GO line is to get to Toronto. So yeah, lots of good things.
Yeah, I'm going to share some of the questions that I get. I'm going to pass them off to you and kind of see.
I'll try my best.
Yeah. So the kind of questions that I get would be like, what kind of jobs are in Welland? What would draw a tenant to that city? Where does the demand for rental come from in Welland?
So there are some industries, some manufacturing plants around Welland. Of course, you'll always get a lot of your tenants applying that are in service industry, like working in Niagara Falls and the casinos, working in some of the hotels. I've got some that are in retail. Not my favorite, obviously, from a stability standpoint, but when there's 2 of them, when I have a double income, we make it work. So I think probably the most volatile scenario would be, I've got a couple that are both in they're servers at in the restaurant scene. So they were both obviously impacted by COVID. So the government assistance really helped out in the meantime. But, there's like Canadian Tire hires a lot of employees. They have a financial services office in Welland. Some of my tenants are driving out to St. Catharines for work. Some even drive to Hamilton.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the fundamentals of Welland are strong for me. They work. But like I said, like when I also have properties in Hamilton, and I can tell a difference when I'm filling a property in Hamilton, that the income levels are just that much higher. You'd have a bigger pool to choose from. So I still screen as heavily as I would in Hamilton as I do in Welland. But I find that it's maybe a one level easier to find an A+ tenant in Hamilton than it is in Welland.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're probably creating these really nice units, and they're 3-bedroom units, or maybe the basements are 2 bedrooms or whatnot. So you demand a certain amount of income. Whereas if you had like 1-bedroom units or something like that, it might be a little bit easier from that perspective. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, I'll just share. I have all of my units. I charge the same rent on. So upstairs, so they're all duplexes, right? Upstairs is always $1,700 plus utilities.
That's great.
Downstairs is always $1,500 plus utilities.
In Welland.
Yeah. Wow. So my
great.
gross rent's about $3,200.
Yeah.
And they pay all their own utilities. So, but when you set your rents at that price point, you will attract people that think they can afford it, first of all, right? I mean, yes, there are always the people that surprise me that send in, that inquire, and I ask them what their income is, and it's barely enough to cover the rent. I'm like, I don't know what they're thinking. So I politely just move along. But when most of the people that are applying for one of my units, have done their budget, right? And they might be upgrading, because a lot of them are moving out of like an older, maybe a rundown house, or they're in a building. Maybe they're in an 8-plex, and some of them aren't the nicest maybe in town, 2-bedroom. And, maybe they're paying $1,200 right now, so they're going to have to up to an extra $300. But they walk into one of the units that I have available, and it's nice. I mean, their car is parked right out the front door. There's a little bit of lawn. Everything's brand spanking new in there, like brand new appliances, all vinyl, luxury vinyl plank tile on the floor, new paint. All my units are 3 bedrooms, by the way, up and down.
Oh, cool.
So that also
because they're bungalows, right?
They're bungalows.
So they're the same. They're going to probably be the same layout up and downstairs.
Pretty
usually.
close. Pretty close. Yeah. So, and I just like that, because I find that even if it's a family of 3 or 4, a lot of them are drawn to a 3-bedroom unit because they want that extra room for an office or storage or whatever, right? So it works, right?
Those numbers are awesome. 1,700 and 1,500.
Yeah.
And you said you're buying around 350 to 400. Was it?
Yeah. The most I've paid in Welland to date was 370.
Wow.
For a bungalow. Now, to be honest, that was the last one I bought was in, I feel like a slacker right now. It was in October. Okay. I bought 2 recently, but they were in Hamilton. Yeah. So, and my last one in Welland was in October, and I paid 370. Yeah. Yeah. So and those numbers work, right? When you do the renovation, you can still recoup some of your funds on the refinance. Not quite the grand slam you can get on some of the Hamilton Mountain projects.
Because you can only push the price so high in Welland. So what kind of refi value are you getting usually?
Between 480 and 500 is pretty common now. And see, the challenge with Welland is that there's not a lot of comps for duplexes or secondary suite homes. Right.
Or even renovated units.
That's what I mean.
It's pretty tough. Even like single family fully renovated.
That's right.
Sometimes that's tough.
It is. It is. And I've had some appraisers come in to my units and have surprised me with a way too low of a value, where I've just refused it, and I said I'm going to do this again in another 2 months. Yeah. And then I got one came in at 435 or something like that, and then we tried later and it was 480. So it is a little bit. There are some swings you have to be ready for. Yeah. So to me, that's not a deal breaker. I mean, when I can pull my money out of the deal, I'm jumping for joy, but I don't always expect that I'm going to take it all out. It's an investment to me. Yeah. And so rather than having my money tied up in, an ETF or stocks or what have you, and I got some money tied up in real estate now. Yeah. Likewise, when I'm talking to some new joint venturers that want to come on board with me, I'm not setting their expectation that I'm going to pull out all your money, right? I'm going to say I'm going to get as much as I can of the renovation budget or your down payment, depending on how you look at it, that I can return to you, but set their expectations up front that in a market like Welland, that we're going to leave some of it in there for a period of time, and maybe we use an opportunity to refinance it in 3 years. Yeah, right. It doesn't have to be in that first 6 months or something.
What's your reno budget usually? About 100, 90 to 100, something like that?
I think if it's just the basement, I think the lowest I've spent on a reno in the basement was about 90. Some renos are quite a bit more than that because a lot of times you buy these bungalows in Welland and they are grandma's house, right? Like they haven't been touched since 1958.
Yeah.
So we just got them, right? So we're talking new kitchen, new bathroom, new flooring.
Upstairs.
Upstairs, sorry. Yeah. So upstairs is a full renovation. And so that all kind of plays into it. Sometimes the windows are super old, so we have to do like $8,000 or $10,000 in windows alone, right? Furnace, AC, roof. I was just looking at one when I was in town a week ago in Welland, and hope I can get this one, but it's like doesn't even have a paved driveway, and it's a single driveway. So then you got to widen the driveway. So there's another $5,000. So that all adds up, right? So when you hear $90K, $100K on the basement, that's about right. But don't be surprised to drop like 120 to 130 when you're all said and done, depending on what you need to do upstairs.
Right.
So it's a fine balance. It's about renovating to rent it. It's not, you're not flipping the property. So you want to get it to the point where you still get the wow when you're showing it to new tenants, they're not going to give me a hard time when I'm asking the $1,700 for that main floor. But yeah, so just, you got to strike the balance. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that you might not get all your money out or even like the entire rental budget, but maybe in a year or 2 years or 3 years, seeing how things are growing in Welland, you might be able to refinance at that point and pull out most of your money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I always try within the first 6 months or so to get some out, because what I've done for the last several projects is I've purchased using private money, and then I refinance it and then put an A lender on it at that point in time. So it forces you to have to do the refinance after you finish the renovation and it's rented.
Yeah.
Then I bring in the appraiser and I show them all the documents. Here it's rented. Here's all the work we did. Here's some comps that I found, and then do the refinance. Get the A lender to come in, pay out the private lender. Right. If I bought it using an A lender mortgage on day one, then I probably wouldn't feel as much pressure to refinance it right away, because I want to get rid of that expensive money on the property, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I did the last several that way, and it worked fine.
Are you doing it through a broker, or you have somebody that you normally deal with?
Broker. So always broker on securing the first mortage.
Yeah. We're talking about private funds here,
funds.
Just so everyone knows. Yeah,
that's private funds. So typically paying about 8%. With about a 2% lender fee on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So, and you're making interest only payments, right? For that period of time during the renovation and getting it rented. So most of my terms allow me to exit that private money within 3 months with no penalty. So it's a 1-year term, but open after 3 months.
Yeah.
So if I can get out of it in 4 months, then that's what I'm going to do. Right. So, but I like it in that it helps me to move quickly. I can make an acquisition on a property and don't worry about financing. They'll find the money for me, and then figure out how I'm going to finance it later. And that could also mean my exit after 3 or 4 months might mean bringing a joint venture on at that point in time.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you remember how you felt the first time you got a private mortgage?
How I felt?
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy. Like when I was, 8% and all these lender fees, I thought crazy, but on the other hand, it was like super easy. Right. So, I mean, obviously, you still go through all the rigmarole when you're getting set up with the broker, like give me all the documents and all that kind of stuff. So, but once I provided all that to the broker, then finding the money, it's super easy. And then like I would call my broker and say, I'm looking at this property. They pull a peer review report for me. And I say, do I need to worry about financing? Like, no, just go buy it. We'll get you money for that. No problem. Yeah. So when that happens a couple times, you start to become really confident that I can go buy this now. And the money's always going to be there. And then when you start looking at the dollars and cents, if it is 8% monthly interest, you run the numbers on that. You're like, that's not the end of the world. When you're paying,
you just tack it onto your rental budget or whatever. Yeah.
So $350,000, figure out the 8% monthly payment on that. Yeah. Okay, I can manage that.
Yeah,
it's like $2,400 or whatever it is payment for 3 months. Either is the upfront lender fee that's where you get burned a little bit, but that is what it is. That's how private lenders make money.
The numbers work; they work.
That's right.
It's just how it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, are you planning on moving into something different moving forward, or you want to stick with duplexes and just keep doing that as long as you can?
Well, so at the beginning you mentioned I left my job, right? So I'm pivoting a little bit because I gave notice at my company in at the very, very beginning of COVID when all that went down. I left, crazy timing on my part, but whatever, it is what it is. So as a result, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go in and qualify for my own A-lender mortgages anymore for a period of time. So, so that means having to find joint venture partners if I want to continue to do what I'm doing. Or option 2 might be getting commercial lending, which is an option I am exploring. But the third option is what I'm actually doing right now is a couple of flips. So, because flips you can just buy with private money and then do your work and then exit, right? And get a bit of a payday. It's not really the strategy that I want to do long term because I want to hold the properties, but I'm doing this as more of an income replacement in the meantime.
Right.
So, and I think that now that I have, I don't have the 9-to-5 grind anymore that I did for so many years. I think that I'm probably going to get into the kind of a cadence around continuing to buy residential real estate, and maybe I keep doing duplexing, or maybe I go a little higher than that. But when I can find good flip opportunities to generate income, which could then serve to help with down payments on future properties or whatever, I'm going to do that as well. So I do have a couple that I acquired for that exact purpose. So
cool.
Yeah.
What kind of commercial? So you mentioned commercial a little bit. Is it just the mortgage side? So same product, same duplexes, or are you thinking about going into bigger projects?
So I've explored the bigger stuff.
Yep.
So I had this conversation with my broker a couple times around. So I guess it was about 6 months before I left my job. We kind of did a road mapping session and discussed, well, what's the post working world going to look like for getting approvals? And that was the advice that I was given, which was, at that point in time, you could go down the path of commercial properties. So depending on the lender, it might be a 6-plex or higher, it could be an 8-plex or higher, because then the lenders will look at the property as, and qualify you based on the property as a business per se, as opposed to just me as the investor in my debt coverage ratio and all that, right? So that was the advice at that time. And I haven't gone down that path yet. I've perused some multifamily properties, talked to realtors, looked at a few. I have not pulled the trigger on any. I guess I just haven't gotten to the point of finding the right one for me, especially knowing that the residential duplexing, it's my sweet spot right now, right? And I kind of, I guess I'm subscribed to the mantra of I'm hitting singles and doubles right now, right? And every duplex I do in Welland or Hamilton is, they're doing really well. They got good tenants in them. They're cash flowing well. And so I think to myself, well, I should just keep doing this. If I can figure out a way to get approvals on that and to keep doing this, whether it's through a joint venture or there are some commercial options as well to do that. You can blanket mortgages across multiple properties. There are, you can.
So just to kind of elaborate on that, you can take multiple residential properties and get a commercial mortgage that covers them.
Exactly. So that's come up a couple times as an option.
Yeah.
The other is, can you qualify in your corporation name? So those are things that I have to explore further, and I haven't yet, but in the coming, 2-3 months, I will be for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we mentioned here, or that I keep hearing you mention, is your relationship with your broker, your mortgage broker, and you've mentioned your other parts of your team as well. But it seems like your mortgage broker has really helped you grow and helped you develop strategies and whatnot. So it's cool to hear that from you.
Yeah, power team is super crucial to an investor. The broker is probably the one I deal with the most, right? Yeah. Other than, your realtor obviously is key in bringing you deals. But I bought my last couple through wholesalers, and that works too. So I think the more active you are, you always have to be looking. I would love to be at the point where I'm sourcing my own deals. And I've had a few, ones that kind of have landed in my lap, but just haven't materialized into me closing on them. But that would be kind of a next step for me too. But anyways, realtor, broker, and then there's the obvious members, right? You're working with your lawyer and accountants, I think are super important to the team, and then your contractor as well. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
One last question before we move on to the next section.
Sure.
Why is it what drives you? What makes you want to do this and put yourself on the line and take on the stress from the tenants and all that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, if I go back to working in corporate, so I worked in the same industry for 23 years, right? Accounting software companies. And you become comfortable, right? Working in one industry where you become known by the community. Okay. And I knew that there was always a bit of a burning itch for me to get involved in doing something for myself. And so I had a couple of false starts like a decade ago where I was looking at different, starting different kinds of businesses that were still in the same arena of what I was doing at work, but never really had the confidence to take the full jump. When real estate kind of came around for me, 2013 or so, then, I think that's when the light bulb went off. And then I started getting my confidence started going up. Like there's something here that I'm going to double down on and I'm going to figure this out. Because the why was that I didn't want to be beholden to a T4 income forever, right? I liked what I did, but when you work in corporate for a long time, you become used to it, comfortable with it, right? And there was one thing that I always tell people is that I always felt there was a little bit of, for me personally, it's hard to be yourself all the time when you're working in corporate, right? You're putting on your game face, and there's a little bit of for me, it felt like a lack of authenticity around who I am as a person. And so I knew that I wanted an opportunity to just be myself, right? Do what I want to do and follow a passion. And when it all crystallized around investing for me in 2013 and 2014, I just became like, my resolve was so strong. I'm going to do this, right? And it just became a matter of time before I kind of got enough properties under my belt and enough cash flow where I knew I could make that transition. And for the past year and a half or so prior to me leaving my corporate job, I actually had the date on my calendar. Like that's the date I'm going to be done. And I nailed it within about 15 days.
Cool. That's awesome.
And so, and it was almost like one of those things where when you write it down, you're going to hold yourself to it. Like I was holding myself accountable to this goal of mine, and I made it happen. And, for me, it became, I just wanted time. I wanted financial independence. I didn't want to have to be beholden to that biweekly paycheck and T4, and which ultimately leads to time with your family, right? And that's kind of what I'm at.
Very cool. Well, keep doing what you're doing. It's great that your strategy is working. You've got your team in place. Everything's going well. Before we move on to the next section, do you have anything to add or any advice to give or anything that we didn't discuss?
I think we covered it. It's just, for me, it always just comes down to, I'm sure everybody says the same thing, right? But it's so easy to get caught up in this mindset of, and you talk to them as much as I do. People reach out to you and they want to pick your brain. I want to have a coffee with you, and I'm going to do this. When you've kind of hit that tipping point yourself and you realize in hindsight that it can be done, like you just want to project that onto other people. Like just do this already. Like stop thinking about it. Like it's not rocket science. It's not super easy. It's not passive, but it can be done. And if you actually are committed to doing it, just do it. Take your first step towards getting it done. And that first step might be go get pre-qualified for your first investment property mortgage, right? Do that.
Yeah.
Like quit thinking about it. Get your head out of the spreadsheet. Right.
Yeah. And stop. I think what a lot of people do is they think about all the things that have to get done rather than breaking it up and saying, okay, well, I can just start by doing this one step. And then once that's done, let's talk about the next step after that.
Yeah.
I find that just to get the ball rolling, you just got to move. Like, just do something.
That's right. Yeah. It's like a linear transition. Like, where am I going to start? I'm going to get this thing done. And I know kind of ultimately what I'm looking to do, but just go over each hurdle one at a time. Just go through it, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't even jump the first hurdle. They just wait. And I'm gonna talk to 10 more people. I'm gonna read 10 more books. I mean, that's all great. Read books, listen to podcasts, but don't just do that, right? Like use that as inspiration to actually take some action.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think another part of that is like managing your stress, because there will be some sleepless nights. Like you said, sometimes there's just that, you got that message or whatever, something's going to happen or whatever the case might be. But just learning to manage your stress and figuring it out. Because
there's always anxiety in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into the random 5. So I'm going to ask you 5 random questions. Well, 4 random questions. One of them is always the same. And you just let me know the first thing that comes to mind. Some of them are actually kind of hard, so I'm just giving you a heads up.
Oh,
like
great.
It's hard to think right on the spot. But yeah, what's something that everyone in the entire world can agree on?
I mean, lots of things. The sky is blue.
Yeah.
Water is wet. Financial independence is awesome.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
Okay, perfect. I don't create these questions. I actually just
It's like a random question generator or something?
it is pretty much,
funny.
yeah. If you had a clock that would count down to any one event of your choosing, what event would you want it to count down to?
Any one event of my choosing?
Yeah.
Well, I would have said financial independence.
Yep.
But now I'm going to say grandchild number 1.
Cool.
How's that?
That's awesome.
I do have 2 daughters, by the way.
Yeah. A couple more years before your grandchild.
19 and 17. So I hope it's more than a couple years.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that was cool. So you've reached financial independence, I'm assuming.
I mean, I would say,
you don't have to work. So.
yeah, I'm not working.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what it means, right? Is this financially independent? Yes. I mean, I'm still hustling.
Yeah.
I'm still running out and dealing with, tenant issues and what have you.
Yeah.
But
you don't have that pressure of having to make that next paycheck to pay your bills.
yeah, you know what it is for me is like it's knowing that I'm not working for the man, right? I'm not working to make some other company successful anymore, right?
Right.
And as much as I enjoyed doing that, and
Yeah.
I had a great gig, right? My last several companies I worked at. Had a lot of opportunity to get out and be on stages and talk to accountants and bookkeepers at big accounting conferences. I know it sounds super boring, but this is what I did. But at the end of the day, you're like, it's not really doing much for me. Yes, it's building my skills and my personal brand up, I suppose. But when you don't have that need, like if I don't feel like having to drive to an office and go work on a Monday, like that's kind of cool not to have that. That thinking anymore. I don't know. Yeah.
That's an awesome feeling to have for sure. Where's your go-to restaurant for amazing food?
My go-to restaurant for amazing food. Well, when we lived in the beaches in Toronto, I was a big fan of, and this is before it became a chain and went everywhere, but the Burger's Priest.
Oh yeah.
They had one in, it was just outside of the beaches, kind of on the way to Leslieville in Toronto. And it was the original location. And that was like, that place was to die for. So, I mean, you literally die if you eat their food a lot. But it'd be the place where there would always be a lineup. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then number 4, what's the most amazing slow motion video you've seen?
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to watch it because I heard it on the radio yesterday. Back in the 70s, they blew up a dead whale carcass on a beach in Oregon.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can watch this thing blow up in slow motion.
Oh, okay.
And it was a big cluster. What happened, right? Like a big chunk of whale blubber, blew a quarter mile, landed on somebody's car, and smashed it all up.
Right.
So I want to watch that thing explode. I mean, there's lots of other good slow mo videos, but that's the one I need to watch.
Okay. And the last question: what success principle do you live by?
So for me, I would say this goes back to, about 10 years ago, I did a week-long executive leadership course at Queen's University, paid for by my employer. Thank you very much. Yeah. Like a $10,000 course or something on site at Queen's, which was really cool. And there was one thing that really stuck with me, and it was just around know who you are, right? Know what you're good at and what you're not as great at, your strengths and your weaknesses. And don't obsess over your weaknesses. Double down on your strengths. And that stuck with me. Like I remember I wrote that down, and I for some reason it was new thinking for me. And this is 10 years ago. And because up until that point, I'd always beat myself up over things that I knew I was not great at in my job, right? And whether it was, I wasn't the greatest, most analytical number cruncher in the world or whatever it was. I was more of a relationship person. I was more of a communicator. And so I just took that to heart to say, like, that if you're good at something, like, learn how to make that your differentiator, right? And so I've really kind of doubled down on that, right? So.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's great. That's good. Great advice. So before we finish things off here, I just want to ask you how people can reach you, what services you might offer.
So best place to reach me, just look up my name on Facebook or on Instagram. I would say I'm probably a little more active on Instagram with my investing adventures. So I post, stories around what's going on with our tenants, filling units for tenants, renovations that we've got going on, things like that. So yeah, Instagram or Facebook, I'm available.
What's your handle on Instagram?
It's my name. So Scott_Zandbergen.
Zandbergen.
Yeah.
I got to remember it. I do, I know it now. I just got to make sure next time I see you, I say it properly. Okay, perfect. Scott, thank you for joining today. And I'll just make sure to put all of your information in the description when we put it up. And yeah, it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks once again for listening to another episode of the Well Off Podcast. Just want to remind you that if you do appreciate the content, all I ask is that you comment, maybe like it if you can on the platform that you're listening to it on, and finally share it with friends and family. I'd love to get the message out there, and it would mean a lot if you can share it. And finally, I just wanted to offer you, as a valued listener, a free copy to the Roadmap to Real Estate Investing, which is a document that I've put together which helps you identify what strategy would best suit your needs at this current time. You go over certain things that are included in this document step by step, and it'll hopefully provide you with some clarity. So have a look. You can go to www.welloff.ca/guide to download your free copy.